Welcome to Motoots. As a fun exercise, we'll get Docker to run on an Android device. Then we'll install Portainer as a container manager, and then install Redis. To accomplish this, we'll use Termux and QEMU to run Linux. From there, it's business as usual. The first thing to do is install Termux. What is Termux? Straight from the project's homepage. Termux is an Android terminal emulator and Linux environment app that works directly with no rooting or setup required. Pretty straightforward. Let's download and install Termux from the Google Play Store. Let's update and upgrade the packages first. One thing to note, Google has been getting restrictive with every new version of Android. Because of that, this version of Termux won't be receiving future updates. I'm running Android 10 and it works just fine, but if you do end up having issues, the newest version is available on F-Droid. After the update is complete, we'll be installing SSH to log in from a computer. It's an optional step, but using a physical keyboard and mouse will make things easier. Let's install OpenSSH. To log in, we'll need a user, password, and internal IP address of this device. Who am I to get the user? Passwd to set the password. And ifconfig to get the IP address. You can go to the Android Wi-Fi settings as well. It will be available under the network you are currently connected to. Let's start the SSH server. Open a terminal from your PC and log in to Termux. Use port 8022. It was remapped for us. And if you install anything on your own, make sure to remap any ports in the 1024 and lower range to something higher. You don't want to break anything. Install QEMU. For those that are curious, after testing against an ARM variant, this performed noticeably better, at least in my environment. To keep things light, we'll download and install Alpine Linux. We'll use wget for downloading. Grab the URL for the latest release of Alpine Linux. We'll use the virtual version. Download it using wget. Create a disk image and boot up our VM for installation. Here, we're creating a 7 GB image in the QCOW2 format. One of the advantages of this format is that it will save us some disk space since it uses compression. If you want to try and maximize performance, try using the RAW format. Now let's boot up Linux. To save some time, I have some commands handy. We'll use a very basic setup. Here we're setting the number of cores to 2 and memory to 2 GB. Then we have some disk and network configuration. Since we'll be installing Portainer and Redis, we need to map some ports. And we specify bootd to boot from the cdrom drive. The mapping isn't needed in this step. It's included to keep the command simplified. After a while, you'll be greeted with a login prompt. Use root to log in. Let's start the setup process. Choose your keyboard layout and variant. For this exercise, we'll use US for both. To keep things simple, accept the defaults for everything until asked about SSH. Enter none. There should only be one disk available. Enter VDA. And sys for how to use it. Y to erase the disk and continue. Exit by powering off. Boot up Linux again, but this time leave out the cdrom drive. Alpine Linux is ready to use. We need the community repository to install Docker. Let's use nano to edit the list of repositories. Install Docker and start the service. Install Portainer. Publish port 9000 so we can access the UI. Once it's up and running, use the device IP and port 9000 to access the UI. Create the administrator. We'll want to manage our local environment, so choose that. Click on the local endpoint. We have one container running, which would be Portainer. We'll install Redis from here. Let's use the Alpine image to save some time. Make port 6379 available. Deploy the container. After a while, you should see a success message. Redis is ready to use. Once it's up and running, you could connect to it as you normally would. For those of you familiar with Spring Boot, I've created a simple app to test connections. Instructions for running the test from command line are in the README file. You can also import it into your favorite IDE and run the Redis test. You'll need to update the property file with your IP address. Thanks for watching.